Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Moms Like Me podcast powered by Support Now. I am so excited to finally be able to interview our wonderful guest today, Amanda Moore. Amanda is the CEO of the Angelman Syndrome Foundation. And I am excited to explore another mom's journey through navigating a rare disease, one that I was not familiar with prior to this conversation. So hopefully, as we always strive to do, this will touch at least one of you that might know someone that is experiencing something like this. So with that, Amanda, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. Amanda, for people that don't know you and your story, I'd love for you to start by sharing a little bit more about you and your background.
Yeah. So I always love talking and sharing the story because I'm a true believer in like divine intervention and like you're at where you're supposed to be for some particular reason. And while you're in it, you may not get the reason why, but you can look back and be like, oh, that makes sense. The reason I'm on this podcast, obviously, is my affiliation with Angelman syndrome. And it's very, very important to me because my beautiful son, Jackson, who is 9, has Angelman. But even before that, I've always wanted to be a mom. It was always something that I knew, didn't have any doubt in my mind that it was something that I wanted in my life. And my husband and I tried on our own for 4 years and did everything we possibly could, fertility, all that fun stuff. And it just wasn't in the cards for us. And so we decided to go the adoption route. As we started, filling out all the paperwork and doing all the things and waiting and praying and, thinking about what our lives were going to be like when we finally were parents, we had to do a lot of waiting, even again. And so we finally got connected with a birth mom who was pregnant with twins. And we were very blessed to be able to be with her from the journey of when she was 6 months pregnant on. We were in the delivery room. We were a part of the whole process. The boys came out, Baden and Jackson came out completely, normal, no health issues. We were in the hospital for 48 hours and home and looking at each other like, dear Jesus, what did we get ourselves into? But I will say—
Little did you know.
No, little did we know, right? I mean, we didn't know any better because we didn't have kids. So we're like, twins, well, we can do this.
Sure.
But early on, both the boys had a lot of feeding issues, which we kept being told were they were twins, so that's probably not abnormal. But then we started seeing Baden start kind of excelling much more, at a rapid rate than Sweet Jackson. And we're like, something's happening. So early on, we went to the doctors and we begged for answers. And like a lot of our families and a lot of people within the rare disease space, period, you get a lot of this, well, it's a waiting game. Well, let's just wait. It's just developmental. Like, let's just see. Let's get him an early intervention. Let's do some therapies, but let's just wait. And so it was constant waiting. It was doing all these different tests outside of actual genetic testing. And, we just kept pushing for, as every mom and dad did, we just kept pressing for answers and to what was happening. And the delay kept getting worse and worse. And so, we were in therapies and in early intervention. And one weekend, Jackson just didn't seem right. And when he was crawling, he kept falling over. So we thought he had an earache. Took him to urgent care, and the doctor at urgent care looked at him and said, your son is having a seizure. We need to get him to the hospital. And I'm like, I had never seen seizures before. Like, all I knew of seizures was the grand mal shaking and really scary looking seizures. I didn't know that there were different types of seizures. So we rushed him to the emergency room. He was having 60 seizures a minute. I mean, it was pretty aggressive. And then finally, there was a young fellow there, and he's like, this EEG looks a lot like an EEG I saw in my book, in one little chapter, one little paragraph about Angelman syndrome. Like, has anybody tested you for Angelman? I'm like, we can't get anyone to do a genetic test. And they're like, well, we need to do a genetic test. And so it was the first time I heard the word Angelman, for sure. And of course, as many moms will tell you, when you hear those words or hear, something, I can still remember like what was in the room, the smell of the room. It almost like I came out of my body and looked down at myself holding Jackson and just being terrified. And then, we had to do the waiting game, and 2 weeks later, we found out he did have Angelman. Now, his brother doesn't, but he does. And once we got the news, I think I went into the shower and I cried for a while. And then I immediately picked up the phone and called the Angelman Syndrome Foundation. And I said, what can I do? Like, I need to know everything I can, but like, I need to like get engaged. And so literally a week after diagnosis, I joined the Angelman Syndrome Foundation board just to figure out how I could support and learn and figure out a way to cure Angelman syndrome for my son. And then a year later, they asked me to take over as the CEO. So I've been
Wow.
doing that for about 6 years.
So when they said Angelman, you did not know what that was, right? So it was what you were reacting to was this a diagnosis that you knew was rare, you never heard of before. So you kind of instinctively knew this was going to be a long road. For those that don't know what Angelman is, what is a simple way of explaining it to somebody?
Yeah, so basically, it's some sort of deletion mutation of this one protein within the 15th chromosome called UBE3A. And there's 4 different kind of subtypes of it, but Jackson has the deletion positive. So that means he has the deletion of it, and he's just missing UBE3A. And what that presents as is severe developmental delays, seizure. He's nonverbal. Sometimes some families will tell you the worst thing is they just don't sleep. Like, I haven't slept in what feels like 9 years. And so those are kind of the overarching major symptoms. And you're right, I had actually never really heard of many rare diseases, period, because it wasn't part of my scope of life. It's not something I had ever experienced before. And so when I heard Angelman syndrome, the doctor there was like, don't Google it. Go to Angelman Syndrome Foundation. But the doctor also told me my son would never walk, never talk, never really show love, emotion, and all these things that he wouldn't do, that he's doing most of those things now because
Wow.
most of kids with Angelman will defy you if you tell them you can't, right? But yeah, early on, no, I had no clue.
I'm so curious. You mentioned something earlier, and I hear this pretty often from rare disease mamas around how doctors typically handle situations like this, where let's wait and see. I think that they do it from a good place. They're cautiously optimistic. All babies develop at their own pace. They don't want to panic the parents anymore. And I find that these moms, they have this like guttural feeling that
Yep.
something is truly off. What is, and excuse my ignorance, what is the downside of getting genetic testing done earlier in the process? Because part of my goal in asking this question is, if a mom out there is listening to this and they're like, I feel like something's off, can they advocate early, I mean, talking early months, to say, no, I want this test done. I want to do genetic testing?
I wish I had a simple answer for that, because even now being in this role and working with clinicians across the world, understanding the hesitance of doing actual genetic testing, sometimes it comes down to dollars and how much it costs, and whether a doctor, if the doctor doesn't feel like there's reason behind it, sometimes the coding or whatever it may be, it can just come down to that. But honestly, I will tell you, a lot of organizations within the rare disease space, including our own, are now partnering with genetic labs to where we can, if a family comes to us and says, I've been investigating, and I will tell you, moms are the best medical investigators known to man. We have so many moms that have diagnosed their child with Angelman before anyone else has, and they just need a genetic test to tell them so. We can get them connected to get genetic testing for free, and which is, a super barrier. But I wish I had a perfect answer for you, but I haven't been able to figure out the why behind people are being so hesitant to doing that. I mean, they did MRIs, they did EEG, they did things that were just as expensive to rule out things with Jackson before they did a genetic test.
It's just interesting to me. That's all. It doesn't come from a place of, well, because nothing is as simple as it seems, right? And again, rare disease, I think one of the things I'm also picking up on is that it's so hard to advocate for your kid when you don't really know what you're advocating for, especially for you as a first-time mom. Truly, the only thing you were comparing him to was his twin brother. And so that adds a level of complexity and stress to the situation because you don't have a degree. You don't hear, you didn't go to medical school. I'm also really curious, and this is a strange question to ask. Where does the name Angelman syndrome come from? It's such a well-named
It's perfect, right?
disease, and I feel like that's got to help so much in helping moms find a diagnosis because it's just you can search it. It can be easily spoken. It can be easily remembered. Where does the name emanate from?
So it's interesting. It originally was called the happy puppet syndrome because our kiddos flap and they have a movement disorder. So it literally they called it the happy puppet syndrome. But the guy who discovered kind of the first patient or saw the first patient with possible symptoms of Angelman syndrome, his name was Harry Angelman. And so he's the one who actually named it the happy puppet syndrome. He was in the UK. And then a geneticist here in the States started seeing some of the same characteristics, got a hold of Harry Angelman's first paper about the one patient he saw with happy puppet syndrome. And they formed a beautiful friendship and they started finding more people that had these. And then he petitioned to have the rare disease changed from happy puppet syndrome to Angelman syndrome, which I'm so glad that he did. But yeah, so it's named after the researcher, the geneticist that originally saw the first patient.
Wow. Wow. So Amanda, you talked a little bit earlier around your initial reaction. It sounds like you took about 2 minutes to grieve before you decided to go into this mode. I would call it overfunctioning, where you just want to do anything and everything to help make it better. And I would imagine you've had a lot of years of reflection. Is there any piece of advice that you would have for a mom that's maybe just got this diagnosis that maybe you wish you would have told yourself earlier on in the process?
Yeah, when I talk to new parents, I always, try to tell them that it's a simple thing to say, but it's literally there are far more better days with Jackson than there are bad days. Every parent has rough days with their kiddos. Ours just may look a little different because it's medically complex disease that can impact our kiddos in so many different ways. But what I would say is, even 6-7 years ago when I started the position, there wasn't a lot of hope on possible treatments or therapies or standards of care on how to really work to give your child the best quality of life that they can find. And it's vastly changed. There are so many. Our community is incredibly involved and incredibly supportive and strong. We have multiple clinical trials happening right now. We know the way to treat a lot of the symptoms of Angelman. So even though getting that diagnosis is nothing that anyone wants for their child, I can promise you that you're coming into an organization or into a community that is well supported, well loved. And as much as I don't try to sugarcoat, but I have to say, there are so many things about Jackson that I pray a therapy doesn't change, because the love and the joy and the simplicity that he brings to life and brings to our family is something that no one else can, my sweet Baden can't do that. I mean, he's already ruined by video games and not ruined, but he has all that. Jackson looks at everything in his life with such immense joy, no judgment, just love and kindness. And we can so much learn from that. And so looking through things through his perspective and his eyes has brought a different level to our family that we would have never experienced without him.
What a beautiful perspective. What a beautiful perspective. And again, just a wonderful example of how maybe life doesn't look exactly the way you thought it would. And that still doesn't mean that there won't be blessings along the way. It just looks different than the way you may have anticipated it looking. You mentioned earlier about certain milestones, certain things. Oh, he'll likely never do this and never do that. And it sounds like he has truly defied the odds. Can you tell us a story around maybe something he's done and just what that felt like, and that emotion that came with, wow, he did it?
Yeah. I mean, I think most families will tell you the first time our children take a step and walk is a moment you'll never forget. I mean, they have to. Jackson's been in, physical therapy since he was very, very, very young. And watching him for years and years try to pull himself up, try to take a step and fall, work with his gait trainer. He had this hot pink walker that was given to us that he would just stroll around church, the mall, whatever, so proud that he was actually doing that. But I remember it was one Sunday night, we were all sitting in the family room. Baden was there, my husband was there, and we were all just playing. And Jackson pulled himself up on the couch, and he loves his twin more than life himself, and back and forth. This is when I get emotional. Their relationship will be one that will, I mean, if anything, Jackson has been successful because of Baden, and Baden is the boy that he is because of Jackson. But he wanted so much to get to his brother, and he pulled himself up on that couch and just walked over to his brother and gave him the biggest hug. And literally, you would have thought, I don't even know how to compare it, because I don't know if there's a comparable moment. But from that point on, he just was walking, and he was so proud of himself and so happy. And we were, I mean, it just was one of those moments. And every milestone he hits, it can be small. Like the other day, he finally went to the bathroom and the toilet by himself. And literally the whole house is up and upwards. You think it's simple things, but it means the world to us as families, and to him to have that dignity to where he can go to the bathroom on his own now, right? So there's every moment comes with him working his butt off to get to it. It also comes from mom and dad working their butt off to take him to therapies, to do things. It comes from Baden losing out on mommy and daddy time because they're doing A, B, and C with Jackson. So everybody in the family unit deserves to celebrate and be a part of that success, because it's quite remarkable. I'll never forget that moment, for sure.
That's such great advice around acknowledging your own successes. I find that moms in particular, we're so quick to give credit to other people, and we are the last to show respect to ourselves and the effort. You said it earlier, from the research and the diagnosis to the therapies, and just the way that moms' minds spin and spin
All the
and
time.
spin all the time. Are there any rituals that you and your husband have implemented so that you can say, look at what we've done, that you can feel good about and reflect on, and to give yourself that boost of confidence?
Oh gosh, I wish there was some that we did for ourselves. We're still working on that. But what I will say is what we have done is, most rare disease days or rare diseases have a day that they celebrate. We have International Angelman Day every February 15th. Well, we've made a tradition since the diagnosis to where we have an International Baden Day, and that he gets a day a year to where we lift him up. We celebrate what he has done and how he has supported his Bubba, his mommy and daddy, and everything. So in my opinion, yes, we have a lot of work to take care of ourselves. I mean, we could do a whole other podcast on the plight of caregivers, because it is hard. But I think the silent person that gets lost in a lot of these families is the sibling. And so we try really, really hard to lift him up on that day. And he gets spoiled beyond belief on that day. And he looks forward to it. He knows it's coming. And I love that. So
That is a really, really cool idea. That's a very, very cool idea. Amanda, you have such a positive spirit about you. And you kind of alluded to it just now. Are there still moments of why us? Why me? Why him?
Oh, all the time. I mean, I think, those moments hit in weird times now, though. I think that at the beginning, it was a lot more. I mean, there was a lot of in the 2 weeks of not knowing if it was for sure Angelman, there was a lot of bargaining with God, right? Like, "If you don't have it be this, I'll do this." Or, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just you're desperate. But, the moments are a little bit far in between now, but I'll find myself watching Baden play soccer, and it will hit me that Jackson will never play on a soccer team with his brother. And those moments are hard. Or every morning Jackson gets on the bus and goes to school, Baden gets on the bus and goes to a separate school because of where we're at in the school system. Not having them be in a school together is hard. Or even being able to watch Baden and Jackson run around and play video games and leave me alone so I can just have my life, like have a moment. There are moments where it hits and it's just debilitating for sure. And I tell families and I try to give myself a lot of grace that you need to have those moments. I think it's unhealthy not to have them. Like you need to be able to experience and not hold in that grief. But honestly, then I'll look at Jackson and there, like I said, he brings a perspective to my life and a joy that doesn't allow me to wallow in it. It makes me get up and think, gosh, like if he can persevere, then I'm going to be just fine. We're going to get through this.
What's the value for you to talk to other parents who have a child with Angelman or another rare disease?
I mean, parents call me all the time just because of my role and they always apologize. I'm so sorry. I know you're busy. I know you're busy. And I tell them constantly, talking to you is so healing for me. Like, I know what it was like to get that diagnosis, but I'm also still a parent. I'm still experiencing everything that you're experiencing. And I think because of my role, sometimes I don't think people forget that, but I think that I don't think people understand the value they're giving me by just letting me talk to them as well. Like, it gives me so much honor to be able to serve the community because I really feel like it was divine intervention. I mean, we adopted Jackson. Like we begged and plead and wanted him so badly. And then for this to happen, it was just divine intervention that this was all supposed to be. And so I get so much value in talking to other families and knowing that I'm not alone in this journey. And it doesn't have to be just an Angelman child. It can be, like you said, us rare disease groups and mamas, we stick together in ways that are very unique. We just have a perspective that a lot of other people don't understand. I mean, even my friends who have neurotypical kids can't understand what it's like to live our life, and that can be challenging. But these moms do.
A huge part of my passion for this podcast and in general is helping teach supporters how to better show up for families like yours. What's a piece of advice that you can give to someone who has maybe a neurotypical child and a family unit that looks traditional? What's a way that they can show support to families like yours?
I mean, I think the most important thing is just keep at it. Like, keep inviting me. Keep inviting me to, go to dinner, even though I'm going to have to say no or cancel. Keep inviting me to, your Christmas parties or to whatever, even though it may be a big challenge. Ask me, like, I really want you to come to this Christmas party. What would make it easier for Jackson that we can have here, how we can support? I think the problem is that a lot of times we have to say no, or at the last minute we can't do it, or we have to leave midway because Jackson's having a meltdown. And then you slowly stop getting invites. You slowly stop hearing from people engaging with you. And so my advice is you just keep at it. If it's a true friendship and you really want to be engaged, you keep asking them. You keep asking questions because they're lying to you if they say they don't want help or need help. They do. They're just scared to ask and think that no one wants to do what they have to do. So I think just keeping at it and showing up and keep asking and inviting is so important.
Amanda, if there are, where's the best place or places for people to find out more about Angelman or you and your family? Where should they go?
Angelman.org is our website. Super easy. It's got every information known to man on there that you need. We have a very robust social community as well. So if you just go to Angelman Syndrome Foundation, you'll find the social group. They're very connected. But if you go to angelman.org, you'll find my cell phone number, you'll find my email, you'll find everything to connect with me. And like I said, it's my most favorite part of the job is to connect with families. So that's the best way to get in contact with us.
I thank you so much. So much of the heart and the soul of Support Now is to be a online tool and resource to help communities come together to serve families like yours, right? Whether that's through money, meals, and volunteers. So I encourage anyone who might be at the early stages of a diagnosis to consider going to our website, supportnow.org, to build a registry, either for themselves or for someone they know. And I just have to add, as a parting note, Amanda, you said that all you wanted in life was to be a mom. And thank God God gave you 2 children to do so. So you could bless both boys with your love and your grace and showing them what it's like to serve no matter who you are. And it's really is so beautiful. And I can tell you that this conversation was well timed even for myself. As navigating kind of the craziness of motherhood, you're really a beautiful example for so many people out there. So thank you for everything you do.
Well, thank you. And if I can just say, Support Now has been huge for our organization, our community as well. I think what you guys are doing is phenomenal. And I think it was a huge gap within this area. So we appreciate that. And this conversation was healing for me as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.